There is a line, often invisible, that separates the ordinary world from one steeped in shadow. Most of us live our lives without ever considering crossing it. We find our purpose, our struggles, and our joys within the familiar boundaries of society. But for some, this isn't enough. They feel a pull towards something else, a darker current running beneath the surface of everyday life. This is the story of those who make a conscious choice to walk a different path, one that leads away from convention and into the arms of what many would call evil. It is a journey often started with a simple question: what if the rules are wrong? What if true power lies not in obedience, but in defiance? The motivations are as varied as the individuals themselves. For some, it is a raw thirst for power, a belief that by aligning with a dark force, they can gain influence, wealth, or control over others that the normal world denies them. For others, it is an act of ultimate rebellion, a way to reject the religious and social structures they feel have failed or oppressed them. It is a dramatic statement against everything they have been taught to hold sacred. And for a surprising number, it begins with simple curiosity. They see the forbidden as a mystery to be solved, a thrilling game to be played, never imagining that the game might have real and terrifying consequences. These aren't characters from a horror film, they are real people living in places we know: America, France, Britain, Germany. They are neighbors, students, and sometimes even wealthy professionals. They seek out hidden groups, perform secret rituals, and pledge their allegiance to a name that has inspired fear for centuries: Satan. They are drawn in by promises of liberation and personal gratification, believing they are mastering a hidden knowledge. What they often find, however, is not empowerment but a slow descent into a world of paranoia, isolation, and psychological torment from which there is often no easy escape. This journey into the heart of modern Satan worship is not about myth or legend. It is about documented cases, police investigations, and the tragic stories of those who got lost along the way. We will explore the origins of organized Satanism, from the philosophical rebellion of Anton LaVey's Church of Satan to the shocking violence of fringe cults. We will look at the evidence left behind, the rituals, the symbols, and the victims. This is an exploration of a very human phenomenon: the temptation to trade one's soul, not for a kingdom, but for a feeling of control in a world that feels chaotic and unjust. For centuries, devil worship was a whispered accusation, a tool used to condemn heretics and outcasts. It was a phantom, feared but rarely seen in any organized form. That all changed in the 1960s, a decade of profound social upheaval in America. Amidst the counterculture movements and the questioning of traditional authority, one man stepped forward to give the devil a new public face. His name was Anton Szandor LaVey, a former carnival worker and police photographer from San Francisco. On Walpurgisnacht, April 30th, 1966, he shaved his head, declared the founding of the Church of Satan, and proclaimed it the dawn of a new age. LaVey was a master of theatrics. With his pointed beard, black clerical collar, and entourage of strange pets, including a lion cub, he cultivated an image that was both menacing and intriguing. He became a media sensation, the self-proclaimed Black Pope who challenged the very foundations of Judeo-Christian morality. He wasn't interested in hiding in the shadows. Instead, he invited the cameras in, performing satanic baptisms and weddings that shocked the public and captivated a generation of disaffected youth. His church wasn't about praying to a literal horned demon in a fiery underworld. It was something far more modern and to some more seductive. He codified his beliefs in 1969 with the publication of the Satanic Bible. This book became the central text for his followers and laid out a philosophy that was less about worship and more about a radical form of individualism. LaVey's Satan was not a deity to be served, but a symbol of human nature's untamed instincts. He argued that concepts like sin and guilt were invented by traditional religions to control people. True enlightenment, he claimed, came from embracing one's carnal desires, pursuing self-interest without apology, and becoming your own God. It was a message of ultimate personal freedom. This philosophy of self-deification was revolutionary. It offered a structured alternative for those who felt like outsiders, who rejected the humility and self-denial preached by mainstream faiths. The Church of Satan provided a community for rebels, intellectuals, and anyone who felt that the world had judged them unfairly. It gave them a framework, complete with rituals and symbols, to celebrate their defiance. LaVey had successfully taken the age-old figure of the adversary and rebranded him as a champion of human potential. creating the first truly organized and visible satanic religion in modern history. The core of Anton LaVey's Satanism was a simple, powerful idea: indulgence, not compulsion. He taught that humans were just animals, driven by the same primal urges for food, sex, and survival, and that pretending otherwise was a form of self-deceit. The Satanic Bible reads more like a manifesto for Ayn Rand-style objectivism than a religious prayer book. It rejects spiritual concepts like heaven and hell, focusing entirely on the here and now. The ultimate goal for a LaVeyan Satanist is to live a full, gratifying life on earth, as there is no promise of an afterlife. This earthly focus was a key part of its appeal, offering tangible rewards instead of abstract spiritual promises. Rituals within the Church of Satan were not designed to summon demons or bargain with supernatural entities. Instead, LaVey described them as psychodrama. They were therapeutic exercises meant to help individuals purge repressed emotions and focus their will. A destruction ritual, for example, wasn't about casting a magical curse on an enemy. It was about allowing oneself to safely express rage and hatred towards someone who had wronged them, thereby freeing the mind from the emotional burden. The ceremonies, with their black robes, candles, and dramatic incantations, were a form of psychological theater, using symbolism to achieve a mental and emotional release. The church attracted a diverse following, but it held a special appeal for young people who felt alienated from mainstream society. Its message of rebellion resonated deeply with those who felt constrained by the strict moral codes of their parents' generation. In a world that told them to conform, the Church of Satan told them to be themselves, unapologetically. The use of heavy metal music, dramatic imagery, and a general embrace of all things taboo made it seem exciting and dangerous. It offered not just a philosophy but an identity, a tribe for those who felt they didn't belong anywhere else. However, this philosophy of radical self-interest had a dark side. By encouraging followers to see themselves as the center of their own universe, it could foster a profound lack of empathy. The Satanic Bible's eye for an eye mentality, while empowering for some, could justify cruelty and vindictiveness in others. While LaVey himself was careful to state that his Satanism did not condone harming the innocent, the very act of celebrating pride, greed, and wrath as virtues opened a door. It created a moral framework where personal desire could, in the wrong hands, become the ultimate justification for any action, no matter how destructive. While the Church of Satan offered a philosophy of self-centered rebellion, other groups took the concept of dark worship to a much more literal and dangerous extreme. In Europe during the early 1990s, a secretive cult known as the Order of the Solar Temple emerged, mixing New Age beliefs with apocalyptic prophecies and a chilling devotion to a charismatic leader. Based primarily in Switzerland and France, the group was led by Luc Jouret, a Belgian homeopath who convinced his followers, many of them wealthy and well-educated, that they were special beings reincarnated from a distant star. It was a bizarre and alluring mythology for those seeking a higher purpose. Jouret's teachings were a complex web of ideas drawn from the Knights Templar, Rosicrucianism, and ufology. He claimed that life on Earth was an illusion, and that a series of global catastrophes was imminent. Their only hope for survival, he preached, was to transit to a higher plane of existence on a planet orbiting the star Sirius. But this journey required a guide, an intermediary. Jouret taught his followers that this intermediary was the devil, who held the key to opening the gate between worlds. This belief transformed their spiritual quest into a dark pact, one that would demand the ultimate sacrifice from its members. The group's dark journey reached its horrifying conclusion in October 1994. Across 3 separate locations in Switzerland and Quebec, Canada, the bodies of 53 members were discovered. The scenes were a gruesome tableau of ritualistic death. Some had been shot, others poisoned, and many were found in burned-out chalets, dressed in ceremonial white and gold robes. Some victims were arranged in a circle, their feet pointing inward like the rays of a sun. Chillingly, farewell letters were left behind, with members writing, "We're going back to our star. The devil opened the gate for us." The event was a shocking mix of murder and mass suicide, orchestrated by the group's leadership. The tragedy of the Order of the Solar Temple serves as a stark reminder of how a search for meaning can be twisted into a path of destruction. These were not just rebellious teenagers, they were doctors, architects, and public officials who surrendered their critical thinking, their fortunes, and ultimately their lives to a single powerful ideology. They were promised an escape from the imperfections of the world, a celestial voyage to a perfect home. Instead, their belief in a dark gatekeeper led them only to a cold, violent end, leaving behind a legacy of horror and a warning about the deadly power of charismatic leaders and fringe beliefs. The idea of animal sacrifice and blood rituals can seem like something from a medieval horror story, not a reality in modern Britain. But in 2001, in the quiet, unassuming town of Stainham, police were confronted with evidence that such practices were very much alive. The investigation began after a local resident reported hearing strange, rhythmic chanting coming from a derelict church late at night. When officers arrived to investigate the abandoned building, they walked into a scene that could have been lifted directly from a film about devil worship. The air was thick with the smell of burned wax and something metallic. Inside the decaying church, the evidence of recent activity was undeniable and deeply disturbing. Black candles were arranged in a circle on the stone floor. In the center of this circle, drawn with what was later confirmed to be animal blood, was a pentagram. At its heart lay the severed head of a goat, a potent and infamous symbol in satanic lore. The walls were covered in hastily scrawled drawings and sigils, depicting dark entities and inverted crosses. It was a clear and deliberate desecration, a space transformed from a place of worship into a stage for a dark and violent ceremony. The police quickly made arrests, apprehending 5 young people who were connected to the grim discovery. During questioning, they identified themselves as members of a small, local cult, calling themselves the Sons of Lucifer. They confessed to performing the rituals, explaining that they were attempting to summon a dark entity. Their goals were chillingly materialistic and petty. They sought power, fame, and in some cases revenge against people they felt had wronged them. They had used animal sacrifice, a practice they learned from obscure occult texts found online, believing it would give their requests more weight in the demonic realm. Perhaps the most unsettling discovery came from the suspects' mobile phones and computers. Investigators found messages and forum posts that connected the Sons of Lucifer to a wider international network of like-minded individuals. They were communicating with small, clandestine groups in Germany and Canada, sharing ritual instructions and boasting about their activities. The Stainham case revealed that modern Satanism wasn't just confined to organized churches or large, infamous cults. It also existed in these small, scattered cells, connected by the internet, where isolated and impressionable people could find validation for their darkest impulses. Sometimes the path to darkness isn't paved with a grand desire for power or a deep philosophical rebellion, but with simple, youthful curiosity. This was the case for Leon, a 19-year-old from a small town in Germany. Feeling isolated and disconnected from his peers, he spent much of his time online, searching for a community where he could belong. He stumbled upon a group on the dark web that called itself the Left Path. They presented themselves as intellectual explorers of forbidden knowledge, and their discussions about magic, rituals, and personal power intrigued Leon. It seemed like an exciting, edgy game. He began participating in their online chats, drawn in by the sense of mystery and belonging. The group's leaders groomed him, praising his intelligence and telling him he had a special potential for their work. They eventually invited him to a real-world initiation ritual, to be held at an abandoned house in the forest outside Berlin. Part of him was nervous, but the desire to be accepted, to be part of something secret and important, was stronger. He agreed to go, believing it would be the ultimate adventure, a story he could tell for the rest of his life. He had no idea how true that would be, or how short that life might become. At the ritual, Leon and other initiates were made to swear a blood oath of loyalty. Surrounded by chanting, masked figures in a candle-lit room, he felt a mixture of fear and exhilaration. He did as he was told, believing it was all just part of the theater. But in the days and weeks that followed, something changed within him. The game was over. He was plagued by horrific nightmares and started experiencing intense paranoia, feeling like he was constantly being watched. He told his few remaining friends that he was hearing voices, whispering things in the quiet of his room. He grew gaunt, withdrawn, and terrified. Leon tried to cut ties with the group, but they wouldn't let him go. He became convinced that the ritual had not just been an act. He believed he had genuinely opened a door to something malevolent and that he was no longer in control. The last anyone heard from him was a frantic, garbled audio message left on a friend's phone. In it, he sobbed, "I thought it was a game, but something came out and I was the one who opened the door." After that message, Leon vanished. Police investigations turned up nothing. His story is a tragic illustration of how a simple search for connection can lead a young person down a path from which they may never return. As we look back at these stories, of Anton LaVey's philosophical rebellion, the Solar Temple's fatal journey, the crude rituals in Stainham, and Leon's tragic disappearance, it is tempting to see the perpetrators as monsters. It is easier to believe they were inherently evil, fundamentally different from the rest of us. But the most unsettling truth is that they were not demons. They were ordinary human beings. They were people driven by recognizable emotions: loneliness, ambition, anger, and a deep-seated desire to find meaning and control in a confusing world. This is what makes their choices so profoundly dangerous. The dark path always begins with a promise. It promises power to the weak, belonging to the outcast, and secret knowledge to the curious. It offers a shortcut past the hard work, patience, and empathy required to build a meaningful life. But this shortcut leads to a dead end. The power it offers is an illusion, the belonging it provides is conditional and paranoid, and the knowledge it reveals is one of suffering and self-destruction. Those who walk this path often lose everything: their friends, their families, their sanity, and sometimes their very lives. They become ghosts in their own stories, cautionary tales for others. It is crucial to think critically before making choices that could have irreversible consequences. The allure of the forbidden can be strong, especially when we feel lost or powerless. But it is in these moments that our true character is tested. Real strength is not found in secret rituals or dark allegiances. It doesn't come from rejecting the world but from engaging with it, from building genuine connections with other people, and from finding the courage to be a force for good, however small. It is found in kindness, integrity, and being true to the best parts of yourself. In the end, the search for meaning is a universal human journey. The stories of those who turn to darkness are not just about them. They are a mirror that reflects our own vulnerabilities. They remind us that the greatest battle between good and evil is not fought in abandoned churches or with supernatural entities. It is fought within the human heart every single day. The most powerful choice we can ever make is to turn towards the light, to find our purpose not in the shadows of rebellion, but in the simple, profound goodness of treating others with compassion and living a life of honor.